Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session. Our first session looking at Cynthia's Revels by Ben Jonson, or The Fountain of Self-Love. No sniggering at the back there. This is a play from around 1600, performed by the children of the Chapel Royal at Blackfriars. The text comes in different versions that survive. There's a quarto and there's a folio. I think we're following the folio, which is the more expensive version. I'm hoping it's the more expensive version because it's quite long, and if there's a longer version, ye gods. So we're following, I think we're following the folio. It's a long play. We're squeezing it into 4 sessions and going at it with a certain amount of pace and alacrity, and it should all be fine and nobody will die. Reading today, First Child and Asotus is
Alexandra, with butterflies in my hair that I'm looking after for the moment.
Reading Second Child as well as Amorphus and Anaides is
Aliki, Chapple, a Greek actor based in Lancaster.
Reading Third Child and Cause is
Sarah Blake, actor, writer and director based in Germany.
Reading Mercury is
Hello, Lynn Freitas, a college composition teacher living in the northwestern United States.
Reading A Voice from Within as well as Cupid is
Hi, I'm Eric. I will try to be within, technically I am within.
And reading the prologue, Prosaites and Gelaia is
Alan, definitely without in Suffolk.
And reading Echo, Hedon and Crighton is
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu and I'm an author based in Romford. Not sure whether I'm within or without now.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'm definitely without any dialogue, but I will be reading stage directions as we go. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into the induction. Yes, Ben Jonson loves an induction. So, before the show officially starts, there are soundings to sort of get people on, the equivalent of the ringing of bells or tannoy announcements to get people into the auditorium. There's 3 soundings usually. So we've had a first sounding. That's getting people generally in the auditorium. Most people are in the auditorium by the second sounding, but the show doesn't officially start until the 3rd. So at this stage, it is the second sounding, and enter 3 of the children struggling.
Pray you away. Wait, fellows. God, so what do you mean?
Mary, that you shall not speak the prologue, sir.
Why? Do you hope to speak it?
Aye, and I think I have most right to it. I'm sure I studied it first.
That's all one. If the author think I can speak it better.
I plead possession of the cloak. Gentlemen, your suffrages, I pray you.
What, children, are you not ashamed? Come in there.
Slid, I'll play nothing in the play unless I speak it.
What will you stand to most voices of the gentlemen? Let that decide it.
Oh, no, Sir Gallant. You presume to have the start of us there, and that makes you offer so prodigally.
No, would I were whipped if I had any such thoughts. Try it by lots either.
Faith, I dare tempt my fortune in a greater venue than this.
Well said, resolute Jack. I am content too. So we draw first, make the cuts.
But will you not snatch my cloak while I'm stooping?
No, we scorn treachery.
Which cut shall speak it?
The shortest.
Agreed. Draw.
And they draw cuts.
The shortest has come to the shortest. Fortune was not altogether blind in this. Now, sir, I hope I shall go forward without your envy.
Pride of all mischievous luck. I was once plucking at the other.
Stay, Jack. Slid, I'll do somewhat now afore I go in, though it be nothing but to revenge myself on the author. Since I speak not his prologue, I'll go tell all the argument of his play aforehand, and so stale his invention to the auditory before it come forth.
Oh, do not sob.
By no means.
First, the title of his play is Cynthia's Revels, as any man that hath hope to be saved by his book can witness. The scene, Gargafy, which I do vehemently suspect for some fustian country, but let that vanish. Here is the court of Cynthia, whither he brings Cupid, travelling on foot, resolved to turn page. By the way, Cupid meets with Mercury, as that's the thing to be noted. Take any of our playbooks without a Cupid or a Mercury in it and burn it for a heretic in poetry.
And in these, and I apologise, important stage direction, in these and the subsequent speeches at every break, the other two interrupt and endeavour to stop him.
Mercury, he, in the nature of a conjurer, raises up Echo, who weeps over her love, or Daffodil. Narcissus, a little, sings, curses the spring, wherein the pretty foolish gentleman melted himself away, and there's an end of her. Now I am to inform you that Cupid and Mercury do both become pages. Cupid attends on Philautia, or self-love, a court lady. Mercury follows Hedon, the voluptuous, and a courtier, one that ranks himself even with Anaides, or the impudent, a gallant. And that's my part. One that keeps laughter, Gelaia, the daughter of Folly, a wench in boy's attire, to wait on him. These in the court meet with Amorphus, or the deformed, a traveller that hath drunk of the fountain, and there tells the wonders of the water. They presently dispatch away their pages with bottles to fetch of it, and themselves go to visit the ladies. I should have told you. Look, these emmets put me out here that with this Amorphus there comes along a citizen's heir, Asotus, or the prodigal, who, in imitation of the traveller who hath the whetstone following him, entertains the beggar to be his attendant. Now, the nymphs, who are mistresses to these gallants, are Philautia, self-love, Fantaste, our light wittiness, Argurian, money, and their guardian, Mother Moria, or Mistress Folly.
Prithee no more.
There! Cupid strikes money in love with the prodigal, makes her dote upon him, gives him jewels, bracelets, carcanets, etc., all which he most ingeniously departs withal to be made known to the other ladies and gallants, and in the heat of this increases his train with the full to follow him, as well as the beggar. By this time, your beggar begins to wait close, who is returned with the rest of his fellow bottlemen. There they all drink, save Argurian, who is fallen into a sudden apoplexy.
His mouth.
Then there's a retired scholar there. You would not wish a thing to be better condemned of a society of gallants than it is, and he applies services, good gentleman, to the Lady Arete, or Virtue, a poor nymph of Cynthia's train that is scarce able to buy herself a gown.
Oh.
You shall see her play in a black robe anon, a creature that, I assure you, is no less scorned than himself. Where am I now? To stand?
Come, leave at last, yet.
Oh, the night is come. 'Twas somewhat dark, methought, and Cynthia intends to come forth. That helps it a little yet. All the courtiers must provide for revels. They conclude upon a mask, the device of which is... Will you ravish me? Oh, that each of these vices, being to appear before Cynthia, would seem other than the deed they are, and therefore assume the most neighbouring virtues as the habiting most cry rape that you are children.
We will have no more of this anticipation. To give them the inventory of their cates aforehand were the discipline of a tavern, and not fitting to this presence.
Tut, this was but to show us the happiness of his memory. I thought at first he would have played the ignorant critic with everything along as he had gone. I expect some such device.
Oh, you shall see me do that rarely. Lend me thy cloak.
Soft, sir, you'll speak my prologue in it.
No, would I might never stir then.
Lend it him.
Well, you have sworn.
And gives him the cloak.
I have. Now, sir, Suppose I am one of your genteel auditors that am come in, having paid my money at the door with much ado, and here I take my place and sit down. I have my 3 sorts of tobacco in my pocket, my light by me, and thus I begin.
And this time, in the breaks in the dialogue, he takes his tobacco. We've played this game before.
By this light, I wonder that any man is so sad to come to see these rascally tits play here. They do act like so many wrens or pismires, not the 5th part of a good face amongst them all. And then the music is abominable, able to stretch a man's ears worse than 10 pillories, and their ditties, most lamentable things like the pitiful fellows that make them poets. By this vapour, and 'twere not for tobacco, I think the very stench of them would poison me. I should not dare to come in at their gates. A man were better visit 15 jails, or a dozen or 2 of hospitals, than once adventure to come near them. How is't? Well?
Excellent. Give me my cloak.
Stay! You shall see me do another now, but a more sober or better gathered gallant. That is, as it may be thought, some friend or well-wisher of the house. And here I enter.
What? Upon the stage too?
Oh, yes, and I step forth like one of the children and ask you, would you have a stool, sir?
A stool, boy.
Aye, sir. If you'll give me 6pence, I'll fetch you one.
For what, I pray thee? What shall I do with it?
Oh, Lord, sir, will you betray your ignorance so much? Why, sir.
Away, wag! What wouldst thou make an implement of me? Slid, the boy takes me for a piece of perspective. I hold my life or some silk curtain come to hang the stage here. Sir Crack, I am none of your fresh pictures that used to beautify the decayed dead Aris in a public theatre.
'Tis a sign, sir, you put not that confidence in your good clothes and your better face that a gentleman should do, sir. But I pray you, sir, let me be a suitor to you, that you will quit our stage, then, and take a place. The play is instantly to begin.
Oh, most willingly, my good wag. But I would speak with your author. Where is he?
Not this way, sure. I assure you, sir, we are not so officiously befriended by him as to have his presence in the dining house, to prompt us aloud, stamp at the bookholder, swear for our proprieties, curse the poor tireman, rail the music out of tune, and sweat for every venial trespass we commit, as some authors would, if he had such fine angles as we. Well, sir, 'tis but our hard fortune.
Nay, Crack, be not disheartened.
Not I, sir, but if you please to confer with our author by attorney, you may, sir. Our proper self here stands for him.
Troth, I have no such serious affair to negotiate with him, but what may be very safely be turned upon thy trust. It is in the general behalf of this fair society here that I am to speak, at least the more judicious part of it, which seems much distasted with the immodest and obscene writing of many in their plays. Besides, they could wish your poets would leave to be promoters of other men's jests, and to waylay all the stale apothegms or old books they can hear of, in print or otherwise, to farce their scenes withal, that they would not so penuriously glean wit from every laundress or hackneyman, or derive their best grace with servile imitation from common stagers, or observation of the company they converse with, as if their invention lived wholly upon another man's trencher. Again, that feeding their friends with nothing of their own but what they have twice or thrice cooked, they should not wantonly give out how soon they had dressed it, nor how many coaches came to carry away the broken meat, besides hobby horses and footcloth nags.
So, sir, this is all the reformation you seek?
It is. Do not you think it necessary to be practised, my little wag?
Yes, where any such ill-habited custom is received.
Oh, I had almost forgotten it too. They say the umbre or ghost of some 3 or 4 plays departed a dozen years since have been seen walking on your stage here. Take heed, boy, if your house be haunted with such hobgoblins, 'twill fright away all your spectators quickly.
Good, sir. But what will you say now? If a poet, untouched with any breath of this disease, finds the tokens upon you that are of the auditory, as some one civet wit among you that knows no other learning than the price of satin and velvets, nor other perfection than the wearing of a neat suit, and yet will censure as desperately as the most professed critic in the house, presuming his clothes should bear him out in it. Another, whom it hath pleased nature to furnish with more beard than brain, prunes his mustachio, lisps, and with some score of affected oaths swears down all that sit upon him that the old Hieronymo, as it was first acted, was the only best and judiciously planned play of Europe. A third, great-bellied juggler, talks of 20 years since, and when Monsieur was here, and would enforce all wits to be of that fashion, because his doublet is still so. A fourth, musicals all by the name of Fustian, that his grounded capacity cannot aspire to. A fifth, only shakes his bottle head, and out of his corky brain squeezeth out a pitiful learned face, and is silent.
By my faith, Jack, you have put me down. Would I knew how to get off with any indifferent grace. Here, take your cloak and promise some satisfaction in your prologue, or I'll be sworn we have marred all.
Tut, fear not, child. This will never distaste a true sense. Be not out. Good enough. I would thou hadst some sugar candy to sweeten thy mouth.
And exit children, in theory. Except they can't. Obviously, one of them has to remain on stage, child number one, I think, to actually do the prologue, even though that's not the person who's going to be reading the prologue at the moment, because we'll just sort of break everything up as the play hasn't started yet. The third sounding comes, and the play will now start. So this is a boys' company. It's in an indoor space. It's at the relaunching, as it were, of boys' companies. So this is one of those first tranche of reanimating this form that we have done some of the ones from this time in the past, but this is from that first re-flourishing of boys' companies from the children of the Chapel Royal. And yeah, lots of fun meta stuff. I love the children's dynamics between them. Just, lend me a cloak. You're not going to do my prologue while wearing it, are you? No, definitely not going to do your prologue. I'm going to do something that's remarkably like doing a prologue, but I'm not going to do your prologue. Lots of really nice play acting and relationships between these characters. I love the way that you've got someone who basically spoils the entire plot. It's basically, they're going, no spoilers. I'm going to do all the spoilers. I'm going to tell everyone the plot. Every little detail of the plot. It's almost like the author doesn't have confidence in the audience to remember to follow what's going on.
Which, in fairness...
well, we don't know yet. Yeah, thoughts on the room. I felt very seen at one point. The one who sits there and swears to all that sit about him that the old Hieronymo, as it was first acted, was the only best and judiciously penned play of Europe. You know, yeah, they don't write good stuff anymore. You know, it's all this. You know, it's. Yeah, I feel very seen there. Also, just the great line. Another whom it have pleased nature to furnish with more beard than brain. I'm not suggesting that such people can be found anywhere near Hoxton. Anyway, Lynn.
Oh, just a little history nerd note. Monsieur in this speech here, when Monsieur was here, that is probably the Duke of Anjou, who that was the last sort of serious marriage negotiation that Elizabeth I was involved in, and he was a younger brother of the King of France, and she was about 40 when this was going on. Eventually, it was decided that no, she would not get married, but some historians feel like that was as close as she ever came to actually getting married. So, and Monsieur was his kind of court nickname. So that, and she's in her mid 60s at this point. So it's actually closer to 25 years ago since Monsieur was here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got. This is all quite meta. This is all very much speaking to the moment, even though the stuff is landing reasonably well. Actually, I think we're following a lot of what's going on, but it's they're basically spending a long time just making fun of the audience who are in the house. So, yeah. And the sort of things that happen then. Alexandra.
We were talking in the chat about the fact that because this is actually between the second and third soundings, so it's before the play has started, you get a bit of fun, a bit of pre-show fun. You get a description of all the events in the story, just in case you wanted that, or you didn't buy the program. But nothing is essential. You're not actually getting material that you would lose if you were just buying your ice cream or sitting down. So it's a fun bit of set up into a mood for the audience. And I imagine that it would have involved improvisation and sort of, more interactivity. Or you could do that if you did it in a modern production.
Oh, I don't believe for a second Ben Jonson would have allowed any improvisation at all. No, do it. No, beat there. That's the joke. Get that. Yeah. Eric. Then Alan.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, it's interesting how Jonson seems obsessed with dividing his audience into the fifths and halves and like all that stuff. Like, I seem to remember in the one about Onion, the case is altered. I think it was, there was this whole like scene about how there are two types of audiences, the ones that like you and the ones that don't get the joke. So something like that. It was just kind of, just sort of, he seems to be very like, oh, I'm misunderstood.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similar business from the other Ben Jonsons that we've so far read, and we've read most of them in approximate chronological order. So he's, none of this is new. I mean, he's doing all his tobacco stuff. He's doing the thing about speaking and doing a puff of tobacco in between lines, and the interruptions, and the way that business flows. Alan?
Yeah, I mean, while you say that Jonson would not probably have allowed improvisation, I very much suspect that a fight director was involved in the choreography of that sequence, because I can just see when the two children are trying to shut up number three, there's probably some fisticuffs or attempted fisticuffs going on.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of potential business there. Running array, and you could choreograph the hell out of that. It's also a question of how much of that you actually need to hear, and how much of that is muffled and lost. And as Alexandra was saying, none of this is essential, because ultimately the play will give us all this stuff later on. Just that idea of early modern audiences not necessarily wanting spoilers. No spoilers. Lynn, and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, the relationship with spoilers is interesting, because so many of the plots for early modern drama were familiar stories. I was just listening to Fortunatus over again. Like, everybody knew the sort of fairy tale of Fortunatus, or they were classical. They were stories taken from classical history. So, they didn't want spoilers if the story was new, but there's so many of the texts that that the dramas were based on were familiar. And of course, we're still talking about Geronimo, for the love of God. It's like, how many times did that get revived? How long do people keep talking about Geronimo is the gift that keeps on giving, man? Everybody knows how that ends. So, yeah, it's sort of interesting. Are spoilers a bad thing, or?
I believe there was some research in terms of people's enjoyment was done at some university somewhere, and found that actually people enjoyed things more if they actually knew what was coming, even if it was something that was designed to be full of surprises. They might not have acknowledged it, but they did enjoy it according to various set things to say that.
One of the reasons I'm obsessed with genre is because there's so much pleasure in predicting in your head what's going to come next, and then it comes true.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, Alexandra just put it in the chat, but I was laughing at it's almost like a backhanded laugh at himself that Jonson puts in about the author. He says, oh, he has his presence in the tiring house, prompt us aloud, stamp at the book holder, swear for our properties, curse the poor tireman, rail the music out of tune, and sweat for every venial trespass we commit. And I like this idea that Jonson actually is like laughing at himself when someone asks where is the author, and it's like, this is what the author would be doing, ruining the play for everyone.
And he's satired himself on this vein at least once before, if not more. So there is something knowing about, this ridiculous figure that he's creating there. Because it is a self-portrait. So it's precisely how we take that is interesting. Eric.
Yeah, also it kind of makes me think that like maybe he owed someone money, so he just put it into the play to make sure that they didn't look for him there. And I don't know, maybe. Also, we've seen like inductions like this before, like Jack Drum's entertainment kind of thing as well.
Yes,
I don't know if that's before or after.
It is after, so that's a Marston text. All pretty much on top of this. It might be actually literally the same year. Let me just check the timeline. It's pretty much bang on top. It might be before actually. It might be Jack Drum. It precedes, but they're both pretty much bang around the same time. So, and it's the same. I say. Reintroducing boy companies, playing around with this metaness stuff. They're both doing the same kind of thing. And let's put it this way: Marston and Jonson will be engaging in a lot of dialogue, shall we say, with each other over the ensuing plays. So there's a lot to dig into that for future sessions. But we need to move on and do more text because there's a lot of text. Let's get into the play proper. The prologue, which should have been performed by the first child, but is going to be performed by somebody else. So prologue after the third sounding.
With gracious silence, sweet attention, quick sight and quicker apprehension, the lights of judgment's throne shine anywhere. How doubtful author hopes that this is their sphere, and therefore opens he himself to those, to other weaker beams his labours close, as loath to prostitute their virgin strain to every vulgar and adulterate brain. In this alone his muse her sweetness hath, she shuns the print of any beaten path, and proves new ways to come to learned ears. Hide ignorance she neither loves nor fears, nor hunts she after popular applause, or foamy praise that drops from common jaws. The garland that she wears their hands must twine, who can both censure, understand, define what merit is, then cast those piercing rays round as a crown, instead of honoured bays, about his poesy, which he knows affords words above action, matter above words.
Exit prologue. Act 1, Scene 1, a grove and fountain. Enter Cupid and Mercury with his Caduceus on different sides.
Who goes there?
Is I blind archer?
Who? Mercury.
I.
Very well.
Stay, Cupid.
Not in your company, Hermes, except your hands were riveted at your back.
Why so, my little rover?
Because I know you have not a finger, but is as long as my quiver, cousin Mercury, when you please to extend it.
Where derive you this speech, boy?
Oh, 'tis your best quality to be ignorant. You did never steal Mars's sword out of the sheath, you, nor Neptune's trident, nor Apollo's bow. No, not you. Alas, your palms, Jupiter knows, they are as tender as the foot of a foundered nag, or a lady's face now, new Mercury, they'll touch nothing.
Go to, infant, you'll be daring still.
Daring? Oh, Janus, what a word is there? Why, my light feather-heeled cuz, what are you any more than my Uncle Jove's pander? A lackey that runs on errands for him, and can whisper a light message to a loose wench with some round volubility. Wait manually at a table with a trencher, warble upon a crowd a little, and fill out nectar when Ganymede's away. One that sweeps the gods' drinking room every morning and sets the cushions in order again when which they threw at one another's head overnight, can brush the carpets, call the stools again at their places, play the crier of the court with an audible voice, and take state of a president upon you at wrestlings, pleadings, negotiations, and so forth. Here's the catalogue of your employments now. Oh no, I err. You have the marshalling of of all the ghosts to the past the Stygian ferry, and I suspect you for a share with the old scholar there, if the truth were known. But let that escape. One other peculiar virtue you possess in lifting or legerdemain, which few of the house of heaven have else besides, I must confess. But methinks that it should not make you put that extreme distance twixt yourself and others, that we should be said to overdare in speaking to your nimble deity. So Hercules might challenge priority of us both, because he can throw the bar farther or lift more joint stools at the arm's end than we. If this might carry it, then we who have made the whole body of divinity tremble at the twang of our bow, and have forced Saturninus himself to lay by his curled front thunder and three-forked fires and put on a masking suit. Too light for a reveler of 18 to be seen in...
How now, my dancing braggart in decimo sexto, charm your skipping tongue.
We seem to have Cupid ran away.
That's Cupid for you.
Character.
Charm your skipping tongue, or I'll... You're muted.
Cupid.
I can't hear you.
He can't hear us.
What the virtue of your snaky tip staff there upon us?
No, boy, but a smart vigor of my plan about your ears. You have forgot since I took your heels up into the air on the very hour I was born, in sight of all the bench of deities, when the silver roof of the Olympian palace rung again with applause for the fact.
Oh no, I remember it freshly by a particular instance from my mother Venus at the same time, but stooped to embrace you and to speak by metaphor. You borrowed a girdle of hers, as you did Jove's scepter while he was laughing, and you would have done his thunder too, but that was too hard for your itching fingers.
'Tis well, sir.
Well, we appear to have lost Cupid there. Seems to be quite frozen now. Having some
Oh,
technical
no.
issues.
Mercury, Cupid, as...
Just hold on a moment to see if Cupid comes back to us.
That's what he gets for messing with Mercury, who is the god of the internet.
Yeah.
It would be. He would be, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Mercury in retrograde.
Mm. Cupid, can you hear us?
I can indeed. Apologies. Yeah, I got a call halfway through, and my earphones connected to that instead of yeah.
So that definitely is
It's like-
Mercury messing with you, isn't it?
Or Loki. I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Or Hermes.
So, tis well, sir. Go from there. Cupid. Ironically,
Sorry, I'm looking at the script now.
your first line is "I heard."
As it turns out.
I heard. One sec. Sorry. Where is my script now? Script wrangling is harder than animal wrangling. What on earth is going on here? Sorry. I heard you but looked at Vulcan's forge the other day and entreated a pair of his new tonks along with you for company. 'Tis joy on you, in faith, that you will keep your hooked talons in practice with anything. Slight now you are on earth, we shall have you filch spoons and candlesticks rather than fail. Pray Jove, the perfumed courtiers keep their casting bottles, pig-tooths, and shuttlecocks for you, or more ordinary gallants their top tobacco boxes, for I'm strangely jealous of your nails.
Never trust me, Cupid, but you are turned a most acute gallant of late. The edge of my wit is clean taken off with the fine and subtle stroke of your thin ground tongue. You fight with too poignant a phrase for me to deal with.
Oh, Hermes, your craft cannot make me confident. I know my own steel to be almost spent, and therefore entreat my peace with you. In time, you are too cunning for me to encounter at length, and I think it my safest ward to close.
Well, for once, I'll suffer you to win upon me, wag, but use not these strains too often. They'll stretch my patience. Whither might you march now?
Faith, to recover thy good thoughts, I'll discover my whole project. The huntress and queen of these groves, Diana, in regard of some black and envious slanders hourly breathed against her for her divine justice on Actaeon, as she pretends, hath here in the vale of Gargaphy proclaimed it as solemn revels, which her godhead put off. She will descend to grace with the full and royal expense of her one of her clearest moons, in which time it shall be lawful for all sorts of ingenious persons to visit her palace, to court her nymphs, to exercise all variety of generous and noble pastimes, as well as to intimate how far she treads such malicious imputations beneath her, as also to show to how clear her beauties are from the least wrinkle of austerity they may be charged with.
But what is all this to Cupid?
Here do I mean to put off the title of a god and take the habit of a page, in which disguise, during the interim of these revels, I will get to follow some one of Diana's nymphs, where if my bow hold and my shafts fly but with half the willingness and aim they are directed, I doubt not, but I shall really redeem the minutes I have lost by their so long and over-nice prescription of my deity from their court.
Pursue it, divine Cupid, it will be rare.
But will Hermes second me?
I am now put to in act an especial designment from my father Jove, but that performed, I am for any fresh action that offers itself.
Well, then we part.
And exit Cupid.
Farewell, good wag. Now to my charge. Echo, fair Echo, speak. 'Tis Mercury that calls thee, sorrowful nymph. Salute me with thy repercussive voice, that I may know what craven of the earth contains thy cavern of the earth contains thy airy spirit. How or where I may direct my speech, that thou mayst hear.
And some versions split this into Act 1, Scene 2. Echo can be heard below, will ascend later.
Here,
So nigh?
I.
Know, gentle soul, then, that I am sent from Jove, who, pitying the sad burthen of thy woes, still growing on thee, in thy want of words, to vent thy passion for Narcissus' death, commands that now, after 3,000 years, which have been exercised in Juno's spite, thou take a corporal figure and ascend, enriched with vocal and articulate power. Make haste, said sad nymph. Thrice shall my winged rod strike the obsequious earth to give thee way. Arise and speak thy sorrows, Echo rise. Here by this fountain, where thy love did pine, whose memory lives fresh to vulgar fame, shrined in this yellow flower that bears his name.
His name revives and lifts me up from earth. Oh, which way shall I first convert myself? Or in what mood shall I say to speak? That in a moment I may be delivered of the prodigious grief I go withal. See, see the morning fount, whose springs weep yet, the untimely fate of that too beauteous boy, that trophy of self-love and spoil of nature, who, now transformed into this drooping flower, hangs the repentant head back from the stream, as if it wished, would I had never looked in such a flattering mirror. O Narcissus, thou that wast once and yet art my Narcissus, had Echo but been private with thy thoughts, she would have dropped away herself in tears till she had all turned water, that in her, as in a truer glass, thou mightest have gazed, and seen thy beauties by more kind reflection. But self-love never yet could look on truth, but with blared beams, slick flattery, and she, are twin-born sisters, and so mix their eyes, as if you sever one, the other dies. Why did the gods give thee a heavenly form, and earthly thoughts to make thee proud of it? Why do I ask? 'Tis now the known disease that beauty hath, to bear too deep a sense of her own self-conceived excellence. Oh, hadst thou known the worth of heaven's rich gift, thou wouldst have turned it to a truer use, and not with starved and covetous ignorance pined in continual eyeing that bright gem, the glance whereof to others had been more than to thy famished mind the wide world's store. So wretched is it to be merely rich. Witness thy youth's dear sweets here spent untasted, like a fair taper with his own flame wasted.
Echo, be brief. Saturnia is abroad, and if she hear, she'll storm at high Jove's will.
I will, kind Mercury, be brief as time. Vouchsafe me, I may do him these last rites, but kiss his flower and sing some morning strain over his watery hearse.
Thou dost obtain. I were no son to Jove should I deny thee. Begin, and more to grace thy cunning voice, the humorous air shall mix her solemn tunes with thy sad words. Strike, music from the spheres, and with your golden raptures swell our ears.
And there's some accompaniment so that Echo can sing. You don't have to sing.
Thanks, Rob. Slow, slow, fresh fount, keep time with my salt tears, yet slower yet. O faintly, gentle springs, list to the heavy part the music bears. Woe weeps out her division when she sings. Droop herbs and flowers, fall grief and showers. Our beauties are not ours. Oh, I could still, like melting snow upon some craggy hill, drop, 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 since nature's pride is now a withered daffodil.
Now, have you done?
Done presently, good Hermes. Bide a little, suffer my thirsty eye to gaze a while, but e'en to taste the place, and I am vanished.
Forego the use and liberty of tongue, and thou mayest dwell on earth, and sport thee there.
Here young Actaeon fell, pursued and torn by Cynthia's wrath, more eager than his hounds. And here, ah me, the place is fatal. See the weeping Niobe, translated hither from Phrygian mountains, and by Phoebe reared, as the proud trophy of her sharp revenge.
Nay, but here.
But here, oh here, the fountain of self-love, in which Latona and her careless nymphs, regardless of my sorrows, bathe themselves in hourly pleasures.
Stint thy babbling tongue. Fond Echo, thou profanest the graces done thee. So idle worldlings merely made of voice censure the power above them. Come away, Jove calls thee hence, and his will brooks no stay.
Oh, stay, I have but one poor thought to clothe in airy garments, and then, faith, I go. Henceforth, thou treacherous and murdering spring, be ever called the fountain of self-love, and with thy water let this curse remain, as an inseparate plague, that who but taste a drop thereof may, with the instant touch, grow dotingly enamoured on themselves. Now, Hermes, I have finished.
Then thy speech must here forsake thee, Echo, and thy voice, as it was wont, rebound but the last words. Farewell.
Well.
Now, Cupid, I am for you and your mirth, to make me light before I leave the earth.
And we're going to pause there at another artificial scene break. Yes, so Echo going from extensive speech back there to you only get the last words of what anyone else has said. It's always like you don't often hear the line "Echo, be brief." It's like Echo most of the time, but this is a sort of the latter end of the narrative here. We have this setup of thing of the who tastes the drop of the water. Oh, I can't see this being ignoring the fact that we've been told the plot earlier. So yeah, it's doing lots of things. Of course, this is a boys' company play, therefore singing. Inevitably, we will have songs, and yes, we know that clearly Echo is one of those, one of them. But they're all presumably brilliant singers because they're a boys' company and they're going to be associated with the Chapel Royal. So therefore, it is Chapel Royal. Yes, Chapel Royal. So it's their day job, basically, beyond being beaten for not knowing their Latin properly. Singing is what they do. Lynn.
So, here's Ben Jonson flaunting his classical learning. And I can't decide whether I find that amusing or tedious. But anyway, I find it like hilariously ironic that here's Ben Jonson like talking about like how bad self-love is. Really, Ben? Okay.
I think you're being mean there. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's interesting because of course we haven't had this kind of regular boys' company performance for thinking back to Lily. This is the kind of stuff that they did quite a lot of. It's connecting with what the boys would be learning to some degree as well. That's not necessarily the reason why Ben Jonson is writing this. So in a sense, I'm wondering whether this is deliberately linking to those kind of earlier plays. I don't know what continuity of they're not, boys' companies are not being used actively for performance, but that doesn't mean necessarily they're not doing plays or as part of what they're doing. They're just not being exploited commercially. So it's an interesting question of continuity or deliberate nodding back, or just to say Ben Jonson just doing some Ben Jonson-y things. But in a sense, I feel it links back to what Lily was doing. People come on and make excessively long speeches about classical literature. And do they get away with it? That's the question. I did struggle occasionally. Towards the end, I was with it, but I found the beginning a little impenetrable. Alexandra.
Yeah, I think it might tell us something about our audience, or about the author's intention as to how to affect the audience, because I think that we are looking at this as going, the author is flaunting his knowledge, but it could be that what it is making an audience feel clever because you're in an environment where all of these references would be understood. I also wanted to point out, you mentioned a little earlier how Echo is written, and I actually really like the way in which it evolves from, we put it, well, it's written in as there being a scene break, so we read that out and thereby lost that moment that transitions between scene 1 and scene 2, when the end of Mercury's speech is that thou mayst hear, and Echo echoes here. Mercury goes so nigh, Echo responds, aye. Mercury has a speech, Echo starts with his last word and actually improvises, as it were, extemporizes afterwards. So we've established how Echo works, and then Echo gets to express original thought and then fade back into just echoing what Mercury says. But what I noticed was, except for the song, on every line, Echo starts with the end of Mercury's line, which I thought was a really nice touch.
Yeah, and there's some really nice usage as well. So Jove's high will, I will. It's actually very, very cleverly done throughout. Yeah, absolutely. Lovely point. Lovely point. Eric?
Well, about that section also, it kind of seems to be a bit of stage business in terms of like, because it starts with Echo below. So it's like sort of, it seems to be like Echo moving from the sort of mortal plane into the sort of, well, not divine, but like being able to speak to the gods. Because then she ascends and goes, his name revives and lifts me up from earth and so on. And then presumably then descends again. I don't know. I'm guessing that's kind of maybe what Jonson was going for with all his notes. And obviously, the Mercury Cupid scene as well is just dirty AF. But also, yeah, I was wondering why Cupid was listing all of Mercury's chores and jobs and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, you don't have a life, man. Therefore, I'm going to give you one. Is that the kind of thing that he was going for?
Yeah, question for the room. Thoughts generally on the Cupid Mercury stuff, because we've been focusing on Echo where we left off. Who wants to leap in? Don't expect me to do everything. Come on. I know we got distracted because of the technical issues. Lynn.
I mean, there was something really fun about it. It's sort of like, Ben Jonson was one of the most educated Englishmen of his day, and he was self-taught. So I could just sort of imagine him thinking, okay, I know all this stuff about Cupid, or what the classical authors say about Cupid and about Mercury. What if they had a conversation? And then this is what came of that. And there's really something kind of delightful about it. They're both these fairly ambiguous, not wholly good, but not exactly evil characters, and they've both done some dodgy things. And so, like, what if they were to have a conversation? This is what it would sound like. So I actually really, I don't know what it has to do with anything, but I kind of enjoyed that scene.
And we get the Decimo Sexto joke again. Yay! I think we've had that about 12 times. Eric.
Well, also the whole thing about Cupid basically wreaking havoc on Diana's rituals and all that stuff seems to be a trope that exists from Lily's time as well, because Lily has it in I think Love's Metamorphosis, not Sappho and Phao, but like it's definitely sort of all the sort of Cupid-y plays, which is totally a technical term. And Galathea's Alexandra's put in the chat and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of like Diana's nymphs and upsetting the sort of social order of things.
Aliki.
So these are two divine characters who are usually presented as either very young men or boys. So that's nice as well, with Cupid being the younger, at least that's how it appeared to me in his obnoxiousness. Constantly going, yeah, but you're a thief, though. Yeah. You steal things, though. Did I mention you're a thief? Very funny.
It really kind of is.
Alexandra.
Just to add to Aliki's point, really interesting that you've got children getting the chance to play children as children. Twice now, once as themselves and then as these child characters.
Okay, let us continue the scene, because I say all of these scenes are effectively artificial. We have Mercury and Echo, they're still on stage, but we have now, having just talked about the Fountain of Self-Love and where his water is cursed, enter Amorphus hastily. Currently muted.
Dear spark of beauty, make not so fast away.
Away!
Stay. Sorry.
Stay, let me observe this portent yet.
I am neither your Minotaur, nor your Centaur, nor your Satyr, nor your Hyena, nor your Babylon, but your mere traveller. Believe me!
Leave me!
I guessed it should be some traveling motion, pursued Echo so.
Know you from whom you fly, or whence?
Hence!
Exit Echo.
This is somewhat above strange. A nymph of her feature and lineament to be so preposterously rude. Well, but to cool myself at yon spring and follow her.
Nay, then, I am familiar with the issue. I will leave you two.
Exit Mercury.
I am a rhinoceros if I had thought a creature of her symmetry would have dared so importionable and abrupt a digression. Liberal and divine fount, suffer my profane hand to take of thy bounties. By the purity of my taste, here is the most ambrosiac water. I will sup of it again. Oh, by thy favour, sweet fount, see, the water, a more running, subtle, and humorous nymph than she permits me to touch and handle her. What should I infer? If my behaviours had been of a cheap or customary garb, my accent or phrase vulgar, my garments trite, my countenance illiterate or unpractised in the encounter of a beautiful and brave attired piece, then I might, with some change of colour, have suspected my faculties, but knowing myself an essence so sublimated and refined by travel, of so studied and well exercised a gesture, so alone in fashion, able to render the face of any statesman living, and to speak the mere extraction of language, one that hath now made the 6th return upon venture, and was your first that ever enriched his country with the laws of the duello, whose optics have drunk the spirit of beauty in some 80 princes' courts where I have resided, and been there fortunate in the amours of 345 ladies, all nobly, if not princely descended, whose names I have in catalogue, to conclude, in all so happy as even admiration herself doth seem to fasten her kisses upon me. Certes, I do neither see, nor feel, nor taste, nor savour the least steam or fume of a reason that should invite this foolish, fastidious nymph so peevishly to abandon me. Well, let the memory of her fleet into air. My thoughts and I am for this other element, water.
And Act 1, Scene 4, another artificial break, has enter Crites and Asotus to Amorphus.
What? The well-dieted Amorphus become a water drinker? I see he means not to write verses then.
No? Crites, why?
Because nonna placere diu, nec vivere carmina possunt, quae scribuntur aquae potoribus.
What say you to your Helicon?
Oh, the muses, well. That's never accepted.
Sir, your muses have no such water, I assure you. Your nectar or the juice of your nepenthe is nothing to it. 'Tis above your metheglin, believe it.
Metheglin? What's that, sir? May I be so audacious to demand?
A kind of Greek wine I have met with, sir, in my travels. It is the same that Demosthenes usually drunk in the composure of all his exquisite and mellifluous orations.
That's to be argued, Amorphus. If we may credit Lucian, who, in his Encomio Demosthenes, affirms he never drank but water in any of his compositions.
Lucian is absurd. He knew nothing. I will believe mine own travels before all the Lucians of Europe. He doth feed you with phitons, figments, and leasings.
Indeed, I think, next a traveller, he does prettily well.
I assure you it was wine. I have tasted it, and from the hand of an Italian antiquary who derives it authentically from the Duke of Ferrara's bottles. How name you the gentleman you are in rank therewith, sir?
'Tis Asotus, son to the late deceased Philagirius, the citizen.
Was his father of any eminent place or means?
He was to have been praetor next year.
Ha! A pretty formal young gallant, in good sooth. Pity he is not more genteelly propagated. Hark you, Crites, you may say to him what I am, if you please. Though I affect not popularity, yet I would loath to stand out to any whom you shall vouchsafe to call friend.
Sir, I fear I may do wrong to your sufficiencies in the reporting of them. by forgetting or misplacing someone. Yourself can best inform him of yourself, sir, except you had some catalogue or list of your faculties ready drawn, which you would request me to show him for you, and him to take notice of.
This Crighton is sour. I will think, sir.
Do so, sir. Oh, heaven, that anything in the likeness of man should suffer these racked extremities for the uttering of his sophisticate good parts.
Crighton, I have a suit to you, but you must not deny me. Pray you, make this gentleman and I friends.
Friends? Why? Is there any difference between you?
No, I mean acquaintance, to know one another.
Oh, now I apprehend you. Your phrase was without me before.
In good faith, he's a most excellent, rare man, I warrant him.
Slight. They are mutually enamoured by this time.
Will you, sweet Crighton?
Yes, yes.
But when? You'll defer it now and forget it.
Why? Is it a thing of such present necessity that it requires so violent a dispatch?
No, but would I might never stir, he's a most ravishing man. Good Crighton, you shall endear me to you, in good faith, La.
Well, your longing shall be satisfied, sir.
And withal you may tell him what my father was, and how well he left me, and that I am his heir.
Leave it to me. I'll forget none of your dear graces, I warrant you.
Nay, I know you can better marshal these affairs than I can. Oh, gods, I'd give all the world if I had for abundance of such acquaintance.
What ridiculous circumstance might I devise now, to bestow this reciprocal brace of butterflies on one upon another?
Since I trod on this side of the Alps, I was not so frozen in my invention. Let me see, to accost him with some choice remnant of Spanish or Italian. That would indifferently express my languages now. Marry then, if he shall fall out to be ignorant, it were both hard and harsh. How else? Step into some ragioni del Stato, and so make my introduction? That were above him too, and out of his element, I fear. Feign to have seen him in Venice, or Padua, or some face near his in similitude. It is too pointed and open. No, it must be a more quaint and collateral device, as stay to frame some encomiastic speech upon this our metropolis, or the wise magistrates thereof, in which politic number 'tis odds but his father filled up a room, descend into a particular admiration of their justice for the true measuring of coals, burning of cans, and such like, as also their religion in pulling down a superstitious cross, and advancing a Venus or Priapus in place of it? Ha! 'Twill do well. Or to talk of some hospital whose walls record his father a benefactor, or of so many buckets bestowed on his parish church in his lifetime, with his name at length for want of arms tricked upon them, any of these. Or to praise the cleanness of the street where he dwelt, or the provident painting of his posts, against he should have been praetor, or, leaving his parent, come to some special ornament about himself, as his rapier, or some other of his accoutrements. I have it! Thanks, gracious Minerva!
Would I had but once spoken to him, and then... He comes to me.
'Tis a most curious and neatly wrought band, this same, as I have seen, sir.
Oh, Lord, sir.
You forgive the humour of mine eye in observing it.
His eye waters after it, it seems.
Oh, Lord, sir, there needs no such apology, I assure you.
I am anticipated. They'll make a solemn deed of gift of themselves. You shall see.
Your riband, too, does most gracefully, in troth.
It is the most genteel and received wear now, sir.
Believe me, sir, I speak it not to humour you. I have not seen a young gentleman generally put on his clothes with more judgment.
Oh, it is your pleasure to say so, sir.
No, as I am virtuous, being altogether untravelled, it strikes me into wonder.
I do purpose to travel, sir, at spring.
I think I shall affect you, sir. This last speech of yours hath begun to make you dear to me.
Oh, Lord, sir, I would there were anything in me, sir, that might appear worthy the least worthiness of your worth, sir. I protest, sir, I should endeavour to show it, sir, with more than common regard, sir.
Oh, here's rare motley, sir.
Both your desert and your endeavours are plentiful. Suspect them not, but by your sweet disposition to travel, I assure you hath made you another myself in mine eye, and struck me enamoured on your beauties.
I would I were the fairest lady of France for your sake, sir, and yet I would travel too.
Oh, you should digress from yourself, else for believe it, your travel is your only thing that rectifies, or as the Italians say, vi rendi pronto all'azione, makes you fit for action.
I think it will be great charge, though, sir.
Charge? Why, 'tis nothing for a gentleman that goes private as yourself, or so my intelligence shall quit my charge at all time. Good faith, this hat hath possessed mine eye exceedingly. 'Tis so pretty and fantastic. What is it, a beaver?
Aye, sir, I'll assure you 'tis a beaver. It cost me 8 crowns this morning.
After your French account?
Yes, sir.
And so near his head, beshrew me, dangerous.
A very pretty fashion, believe me, and a most novel kind of trim. Your band is conceited, too.
Sir, it is all at your service.
Oh, pardon me.
I beseech you, sir, if you please to wear it, you shall do me a most infinite grace.
Slight, will he be praised out of his clothes?
By heaven, sir, I do not offer it you after the Italian manner. I would you should conceive so of me.
Sir, I shall fear to appear rude in denying your courtesies, especially being invited by so proper a distinction. May I pray your name, sir?
My name is Asotus, sir.
I take your love, gentle Asotus, but let me win you to receive this in exchange.
And they exchange bevers.
Art, they'll exchange doublets anon.
And from this time esteem yourself in the first rank of those few whom I profess to love. What make you in the company of this scholar here? I will bring you known to gallants as Anaides of the ordinary, Hedon the courtier, and others whose society shall render you graced and respected. This is a trivial fellow, too mean, too cheap, too coarse for you to converse with.
Slid, this is not worth a crown, and mine cost me 8 but this morning.
I looked when he would repent him. He has begun to be sad a good while.
Sir, shall I say to you, for that hat, be not sad. Be not so sad. It is a relic I could not so easily have departed with, but as the hieroglyphic of my affection. You shall alter it to what form you please. It will take any block. I have received it varied on record to the 3,000th time, and not so few. It hath these virtues beside. Your head shall not ache under it, nor your brain leave you without license. It will preserve your complexion to eternity, for no beam of the sun, should you wear it under zona torrida, hath power to approach it by 2 ells. It is proof against thunder and enchantment, and was given me by a great man in Russia as an especial prized present, and constantly affirmed to be the hat that accompanied the politic Ulysses in his tedious and 10 years' travels.
By Jove, I will not depart with all whomsoever would give me a million.
And we're going to pause at another artificial scene break. We've got someone who wants to be upwardly mobile, who's going to be trained to be more much more courtly and more upwardly mobile than he is. Beyond, he's got money, but he's not necessarily got breeding, as it were. And once again, we've got someone training someone. We've been here before, which is cool. It's fine. It's that question of how much of a gulling is going on here, or how much of this is genuinely trying to help the guy. And so that at the end when he's sort of handing him this rather rubbish hat. But look, no, it's got a great pedigree. It's got patina. It's got a great heritage to it. It speaks. So yeah. That's one of those things. Thoughts in the room about these three people. We've got three very different characters, sort of bouncing off each other. Elizabeth.
I just can't get over this hat business. It reminds me of Wicked when Galinda gives Elphaba the ugliest hat you've ever seen, and she says, "You deserve this hat. You deserve each other." Kind of thing, and it just made me laugh so much that I thought that if they had really ugly hats on, they would make quite a funny joke.
Other thoughts in the room? Hats aside, or more on hats, etc. Because we got three very different. Crites is throwing learning around left, right, and centre. Not quite full Latin bombs every line, but the odd chucking the odd one over the shoulder. There we are. And is quite nice. I quite like the way that the sentences are structured as well. Just that sort of flow of, displaying learning, as it were, and that in a slightly pompous, slightly tedious way, but without being actively tedious for the audience, I think, to listen to, which I think is nicely done. Eric.
I'm just wondering about the sort of, because Crites, like how similar do Amorphus and Asotus look? Because I'm just thinking that Crites actually makes a comment they'll change outlets and on, and I'm thinking they either don't look anything alike and sort of it's like the Prince and the Pauper kind of story, or sort of they either don't look alike and. Size-wise, one might be huge and the other guy is probably just sort of lean and tall, and the other guy might be sort of, or they look exactly alike, which would be really awkward. Sort of, the way early modern disguises work as well. I don't know, it would be interesting to play with that dynamic as well.
I don't think we've talked about Amorphus's description of them themselves as well, because it's talking about their shape and the I am a rhinoceros. I think is actually moderately literal in terms of a description of themselves as well. So there's a question about bodies and not just what people are wearing, but also how they are being portrayed and who they are in a very physical way. So I think there's an awful lot actually to unpack there. We're going to go on and finish the act, I think. We've got a tiny little scene that we're going to do to finish the act. So Asotus, Amorphus and Crites are still on stage. Enter Cos and Prosaites, to Amorphus, Asotus and Crites as we go into scene 5.
Save your sweet bloods. Does any of you want a creature or a dependent?
Beshrew me, a fine blunt slave.
A page of good timber. It will now be my grace to entertain him first, though I could share him again in private. How art thou called?
Cos, sir, Cos.
Cause, how happily hath fortune furnished him with a whetstone.
I do entertain you, Cos. Conceal your quality till we be private. If your parts be worthy of me, I will countenance you. If not, catechize you. Gentles, shall we go?
Stay, sir. I'll but entertain this other fellow, and then I have a great humour to taste of this water too. But I'll come again alone for that. Mark the place. What's your name, youth?
Prosaites, sir.
Prosaites, a very fine name, Crites, is it not?
Yes, And a very ancient one, sir, the beggar.
Follow me, good Prosaites. Let's talk.
And they exit, leaving Crites alone.
It will rank even with you ere it be long, if you hold on your course. O vanity, how are thy painted beauties doted on by light and empty idiots? How pursued with open and extended appetite? How they do sweat and run themselves from breath, raised on their toes to catch thy airy forms, still turning giddy till they reel like drunkards, that by the merry madness of 1 hour, with the long irksomeness of following time. Oh, how despised and base a thing is man, if he not strive to erect his grovelling thoughts above the strain of flesh. But how more cheap, when even his best and understanding part, the crown and strength of all his faculties, floats like a dead drowned body on the stream of vulgar humour, mixed with commonest dregs. I suffer for their guilt now, and my soul, like one that looks on ill-affected eyes, is hurt with mere intention on their follies. Why will I view them then, my sense might ask me? Or is it a rarity, or some new object that strains my strict observance to this point? Oh, would it were! Therein I could afford my spirit should draw a little near to theirs, to gaze on novelties, so vice were one. Tut, she is stale, rank, foul, and were it not that those two woo her, greet her with locked eyes, in spite of all the impostures, paintings, drugs, which her bored custom daubs her cheeks withal, she would betray her loathed and leprous face, and fright the enamoured dotards from themselves. But such is the perverseness of our nature, that if we once but fancy levity, how antic and ridiculous soe'er it suit with us, yet will our muffled thought choose rather not to see it than avoid it. And if we can but banish our own sense, we act our mimic tricks with that free license, that lust, that pleasure, that security, as if we practiced in a pasteboard case, and no one saw the motion but the motion. Well, check thy passion, lest it grow too loud. While fools are pitied, they wax fat and proud.
Exit Crites. Just, I think it's fair to say, he's not been a fan of some of the stuff what's been said earlier. We've got some definite interest in the waters. I think definitely the fame of the waters is clearer, but we have got Asotus saying, "I'll come back later. I'll come back later when there aren't so many people around." Because don't you hate it when there are queues? Lynn.
So Crites just turned into quite the buzzkill. It's like we're all like kind of having fun and it's kind of silly and it's just like, and then it gets all serious and critical. It's like, geez.
He's had a few asides during some of the earlier banter, so he's it's not a surprise as such.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. But then he gets this rather long speech where he like starts to finger wag at us.
Yeah.
It's cue up the musicians for the interval. Okay, guys. When Crites stops talking, and 1, 2, 3. Has he stopped talking? Oh no, he started again. Hang on. Eric.
I did like the line. Let me just find it because I lost it. The crown and strength of all his faculties floats like a dead drowned body on the stream of vulgar humor. That was just sort of, yeah.
Like the metaphor.
But Elizabeth.
I really liked Crites' speech. It read so well, but it just seemed to come out of nowhere. He has his asides, but now he has like a diatribe of all of the things he's not happy with. And I feel like we almost didn't see it coming. We knew that he wasn't happy, but I didn't know he was this unhappy.
I think that's the thing is, in a sense, we didn't see it coming because we've not seen it. I think that's something that actually in a staging, because he's sort of left out of all of the action of the scene. He comes in and does some talking, and I think he just needs to be building up to he's being polite, and maybe and he just explodes at the end of the scene. So I think there might be some, we've been here before. Crites feels very familiar. If only in myself, because it's a bit too close to my name. So when I get cross, I do a Crites. Eric.
Yeah, it is very much that sort of. It's like the Diogenes figure in. I want to say Cambyses. It's not Cambyses. I don't know. I'm confused. Yeah, Campaspe. Yes, it's all the camp people. Very, very, very. Yeah, Campaspe. Yes. Yeah, he's basically that character.
Other thoughts before we move into Act 2? So we've got a couple of units of action to get through. We may stroll on beyond it if we have time. We'll see how we go. We don't have to stick to the schedule. Any other thoughts on Act 1? All set in the same place, pretty much. It's all just ongoing flowing action. It's basically one scene. It's been artificially split up, but which is useful for us because it's quite helpful. It's split in the manner of major entrances or exits become a scene, a division. Elizabeth?
I'm just wondering if we get a strong sense of time and place in this play so far. I find myself, but it is a bit amorphous, no pun intended, that where we are and when we are. I think costumes might have to really make it.
Yeah.
Well, also because we've got I suspect we're going to have each act is going to effectively be a single location, and we will, as it's an indoor show, there will be effectively interval breaks between acts. It says a grove and a fountain, and I'm fairly certain there's actually Ben Jonson, not later editors, stating that. So actually there might be what we might, in a modern term, think of as set for this kind of thing. So setting-wise, and then, classical-ish in terms of time, I don't think it has to have a specific time. It's not like it's set in a historical period. It's set in the past, when gods were gods and men were grumpy. Alexandra?
I just wanted to point out something that I found interesting as a difference between this play and lots of other plays that we've seen, where the lower class character, the servants, in this case, Cos and Prosaites, would come in and have a scene in which they make lots of jokes and entertain the audience, and then, or in the process of that, offer themselves up to masters and be hired, and that would be the scene. Whereas what we've got here is we've got a lot of hopefully humor, or at least entertainment, interestingness being delivered by the very educated characters and the characters who are going to be masters. The servants turn up, offer themselves up, get hired, the end, which must be intentional from Jonson as an overturning of genre, I guess.
They're a different troupe by this point. They're fundamentally different troupes. It's whereas I think before we had a sort of continuity of these boys were quite good at doing this, so this is the kind of scenes they get. Whereas these boys might be doing, new broom, new time. That conceit is not necessarily a thing in the same way as I suspect it was, 10 plus years ago. Alexandra again.
I don't think that's the case. I think other authors are doing that still now. I think other authors writing for this children's companies in general could easily continue with that as a thing. But Jonson is setting this in a place where, or in a not a place necessarily, but in a context where the jokes are supposed to be intelligent jokes, and it's supposed to be clever funny, and so we're going to it's sort of creating a class distinction within the characters of the play, that is maybe helpful towards making the audience feel of a higher class, certainly feel like they're clever people watching a clever play written by a very clever author. Isn't this author clever? He's so clever, isn't he?
Well, though I don't know if that the two connect in the sense that the servant characters often were doing a lot of clever stuff as well. In that sense, I mean, they were very learned servants a lot of the time. They were bantering with Latin half the time. But anyway, this is one for compare and contrast exercises later on. But no, good stuff, good stuff. We're going to move on, I'm afraid, Eric. Hold on to the thought. Hold on to it. Keep it warm inside. Act 2, Scene 1. We're in the court now, apparently. Enter Cupid and Mercury, disguised as pages.
Why, this was most unexpectedly followed, my divine delicate Mercury, by the beard of Jove. Thou art a precious deity.
Nay, Cupid, leave to speak improperly. Since we are turned cracks, let's study to be like cracks. Practice their language and behaviors, and not with a dead imitation. Act freely, carelessly, and capriciously, as if our veins ran with quicksilver, and not utter a phrase but what shall come forth steeped in the very brine of conceit, and sparkle like salt in fire.
It's not everyone's happiness, Hermes, but now you can presume upon the easiness and dexterity of your wit. You shall give me leave to be a little jealous of mine, and not desperately to hazard it after your capering humor.
Nay then, Cupid, I think we must have you hoodwinked again, for you are grown too provident since your eyes were at liberty.
Not so, Mercury. I'm still blind, Cupid, to thee.
And what to the lady nymph you serve?
Troth, page boy, and sir, these are all my titles.
Then thou hast not altered thy name with thy disguise.
No, that had been supererogation. You shall never hear your courtier called but by one of these three.
Faith, then both our fortunes are the same.
Why, what parcel of man hast thou lighted on for a master?
Such a one as before I begin to decipher him, I dare not affirm to be anything less than a courtier. So much he is during this open time of revels, and would be longer, but that his means are to leave him shortly after. His name is Hedon, a gallant wholly consecrated to his pleasures.
Hedon, he uses much to my lady's chamber, I think.
How is she called? And then I can show thee.
Madam Philaftia.
Oh, aye, he affects her very particularly indeed. These are his graces. He doth, besides me, keep a barber and a monkey. He has a rich wrought waistcoat to entertain his visitants in, with a cap almost suitable. His curtains and beddings are thought to be his own. His bathing tub is not suspected. He loves to have a fencer, a pedant, and a musician seen in his lodgings o' mornings.
And not a poet.
Fie, no. Himself is a rhymer, and that's thought better than a poet. He is not lightly within to his mercer. No, though he come when he takes physic, which is commonly after his play. He beats a tailor very well, but a stocking seller admirably, and so consequently, anyone he owes money to, that dares not resist him. He never makes general invitement, but against the publishing of a new suit. Marry, then you shall have more drawn to his lodging than come to the launching of some 3 ships, especially if he be furnished with supplies for the retiring of his old wardrobe from pawn. If not, he does hire a stock of apparel and some 40 or 50 pound in gold for that forenoon to show. He is thought a very necessary perfume for the presents, and for that only cause welcome thither. 6 milliners' shops afford you not the like scent. He courts ladies with how many great horse he hath rid that morning, or how oft he hath done the whole, or half the pomado in a 7 night before, and sometimes ventures so far upon the virtue of his pomander that he dares tell him how many shirts he hath sweat at tennis this week, but wisely conceals how many dozens of balls he is on the score. Oh, here he comes. That is all this.
And Act 2, Scene 2, enter Hedon, Anaides, and Gelaia to Cupid and Mercury.
Boy,
Sir?
are any of the ladies in the presence?
Not yet, sir.
Give me some gold. More.
That thy boy, Hedon.
Aye. What thinkest thou of him?
I'd geld him. I warrant he has the philosopher's stone.
Well said, my good melancholy devil. Sirrah, I have devised one or two of the prettiest oaths this morning in my bed, as ever thou heardest, to protest withal in the presence.
Prithee, let's hear them.
Soft, thou'lt use them afore me.
No, damn me then. I have more oaths than I know how to utter, by this air.
Faith, one is, by the tip of your ear, sweet lady. Is it not pretty and genteel?
Yes, for the person 'tis applied to, a lady. It should be light and...
Nay, the other is better, exceeds it much. The invention is farther fet too. By the white valley that lies between the alpine hills of your bosom, I protest.
Well, you travelled for that, Hedon.
I in a map where his eyes were but blind guides to his understanding, it seems.
And then I have a salutation will nick all by this caper. Hey.
How's that?
You know I call Madame Philotia my honour, and she calls me her ambition. Now, when I meet her in the presence anon, I will come to her and say, Sweet honour, I have hitherto contented my sense with the lilies of your hand, but now I will taste the roses of your lip, and withal kiss her. To which she cannot but blushing answer, Nay, now you are too ambitious. And then do I reply, I cannot be too ambitious of honour, sweet lady. Wilt not be good? Huh? Huh?
Oh, assure your soul.
By heaven, I think 'twill be excellent and a very politic achievement of a kiss.
I have thought upon one for Moria, of a sudden, too, if it take.
What is it, my dear invention?
Marry, I will come to her, and she always wears a muff, if you be remembered, and I will tell her, Madam, your whole self cannot but be perfectly wise, for your hands have wit enough to keep themselves warm.
Now before Jove, admirable. Look, thy page takes it too. My Phoebus, my sweet facetious rascal, I could eat water gruel with thee a month for this jest, my dear rogue.
Oh, Hercules, 'tis your only dish, above all your potatoes or oyster pies in the world.
I have ruminated upon a most rare wish too, and the prophecy to it, but I'll have some friend to be the prophet as thus. I do wish myself one of my mistresses' Chiopini. Another demands, why would he be one of his mistresses' Chiopini? A third answers, because he would make her higher. A fourth shall say, that will make her proud. And the fifth shall conclude, then do I prophesy pride will have a fall, and he shall give it her.
I will be your prophet. God so, it will be most exquisite. Thou art a fine adventurous rogue, sirrah.
Nay, and I have posies for rings too, and riddles that they dream not of.
Oh, tut, they'll do that when they come to sleep on them, time enough. But were thy devices never in the presence yet, Hedon?
Oh no, I disdain that.
'Twere good we went afore then, and brought them acquainted with the room where they shall act. Let the strangeness of it put them out of countenance when they should come forth.
Exeunt Hedon, Anaides, and the very talkative Gelaia.
Is that a courtier too?
Troth, no. He has two essential parts of the courtier, pride and ignorance. Marry, the rest comes somewhat after the ordinary gallant. 'Tis impudence itself, Anaides, one that speaks all that comes in his cheeks, and will blush no more than a sack butt. He lightly occupies the jester's room at the table and keeps laughter. Gelaia, a wench in page's attire, following him in place of a squire, whom now and then tickles with some strange, ridiculous stuff uttered as his land came to him by chance. He will censure or discourse of anything, but as absurdly as you would wish. His fashion is not to take knowledge of him that is beneath him in clothes. He never drinks below the salt. He does naturally admire his wit that wears gold lace or tissue, stabs any man that speaks more contemptuously of that scholar than he. He is a great proficient in all the liberal sciences, as cheating, drinking, swaggering, whoring, and such like. He never kneels but to pledge healths, nor praise but for pipe of pudding tobacco. He will blaspheme in his shirt. The oaths which he vomits out at one supper would maintain a town of garrison in good swearing a 12-month. One other genuine quality he has which crowns all these, and that is this: to a friend in want he will not depart with the weight of a soldered groat, lest the world might censure him prodigal or report him a gull. Marry, to his cockatrice or punketto, half a dozen taffeta gowns or satin kirtles in a pair or two of months, why, they are nothing.
I commend him. He's one of my clients.
And Mercury and Cupid retire to the back of the stage while some other stuff happens, which we won't get to today because we are approaching the end of the session in real terms. So, yeah, we've been introduced to the court. Cupid and Mercury are in disguise. So, in a sense, we've got 2 pages sort of stuff going on here. Some really dodgy dialogue the moment the courtiers come on and going, is that your boy there? Yes. And then, all sorts of witty bants between the courtiers there, which is obviously absurd and over the top and ridiculous and what it is. And, we've got, they get to be mocked by Mercury and discussed, and I feel again modern day satire might have occurred at this point. There might be some stuff going on there. Thoughts in the room about this sort of introduction to the court in Act 2? Eric, then Lynn.
It just, there's a part of me going, like Cupid going, I commend him, he's one of my clients. Yeah, Cupid is totally the pimp behind all this. Just sort of, I imagined him taking out like a small black book and just like sort of checking off his list, like flipping through the pages to check who's paid and who hasn't. And also, I find it interesting that in this section, like the sort of Mercury section, like last section of the scene, I mean, you get this list of things associated with clothing. And we know from like the place that like we've read as well from Marston as well, he uses a lot of like clothing references as well, like the whole like fashion things and sort of talking about ruffs or kirtles or taffeta gowns and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when describing and mocking these over the top courtiers, the clothing is going to be the big thing, isn't it? It's going to be the big character draw. It's what's going to give the actors something to play. It's going to all come from. It's going to come from the shoes. It's going to come from all the clothing. Lynn.
Yeah, I was just enjoying I was really enjoying Jonson's language. At the beginning of the scene, Mercury says something about it's like if we're going to be like pages to courtiers, we're going to act like pages to courtiers, and we're just going to have this sparkling wit. And I'm like, you're really setting yourself up there, setting a high bar. But it pays off. He makes good on his promise. And of course you have the contrast with the very labored wit of Hedon and Anaides. Like, I thought of a joke while I was lying in bed this morning. And then the sort of seeming spontaneousness of Mercury's description of the courtiers, like he does naturally admire the wit of anyone who wears golden lace. He's like such a social climber, and he swears enough at one supper it would like supply a town of garrison for a year. So it's so fluent and so clever, and so evocative, and it makes a really kind of amusing contrast to how hard the courtiers have to work to say, like, I've thought of one clever thing I'm gonna say.
I mean, it's it's set up, and then it's that thing that Cupid and Mercury set up the arrival of these courtiers. The courtiers appear, and then they riff on that some more after they've exited before the next bit of action comes on. And yeah, just the way that Hedon and Anaides going, Anaides going, oh, please tell me, and he's going, no, you'll steal my new chat-up lines, and it's just, can you just imagine going into a bar, and just by the white lily that lies between the alpine hills of your bosom, I protect. Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether that's the kind of thing I would try in real life. I don't know. Would that anyone think that's got legs? No. Okay. It's been a long pandemic. Anything looks like a chance. Eric.
Yeah, totally. I think the bit that I enjoyed in this scene was Cupid, which I'd read completely wrongly because I haven't, obviously it's a cold read, so it kind of passed me, was till like we'd actually finished the scene, was Cupid going, troth, page, boy, sir, these are all my titles, and then Mercury goes, so you've not changed the name with thy disguise, and it's like, what's the point? But then when Hedon actually calls out boy, Cupid does not reply. It's Mercury who's actually it's like, this is Mercury's boss in this scene. He gets his own like sort of random scene. Yeah.
I mean, presumably Hedon just calls for the nearest boy. Does he really care? I think they presumably they are assigned, but yeah, that's just a boy. They don't need names. Boy will do. Okay, we're approaching final thoughts as we go into extra time. So we're about 1/4 of the way into the play. It's not quite an even division per session. It is a long text. It would need cutting quite considerably. But so far, I mean, it moves quite fast, so maybe not as considerably as one initially would think, but it still would need either a very, very long staging time. But I mean, just looking at the scene so far in Act 2, we've got an awful lot of description of stuff that we've just watched or we're about to watch. It's like, we've said this before with Jonson, pick our favourite lines out of that, play it, and then move into the scene and the action itself and get in and get out again. And that's the great thing about having too much material, is, we can choose our favourite bits. But actually, I have to say my decision-making process as to what to cut feels quite straightforward, and I'd be interested to see what the difference between the shorter version is as well, and what the textual variations are. I'm fairly certain this is the most expansive text. And I don't know if there are specific plot variations as well, which I suspect there probably are minor plot differences. So that is something to look at as well into the future. But I don't know, this feels quite straightforward as an exercise. There may occasionally be some awkward decisions, but no, I feel it's got straightforward. And the question is, of course, does the induction technically doesn't cut into the running time because it's happening in the pre-show. But I always wonder with that kind of pre-show thing of, today, and I suspect in the early modern period, the whole thing of, oh, can the show just start when it starts? Really, do we have to have this thing kind of being clever meta thing? It's that sort of, it alienates some audiences. Some audiences absolutely love it, and It's just a sort of decision to go with. But of course, if you do that, it has to be a boys' company, because I think that opening doesn't work if it's not played by children. I think there's something quite charming about it, actually, that works where an adult company... And maybe that's been an issue with some of the earlier Jonson we've done, which is for adult companies, that the charm that he might have got away with younger ones wasn't there. I don't know. So, thoughts from room. Final thoughts. Who should we go to first? Aliki! Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really feel that we've gotten into the meat of the play enough to know how I feel about it, but we've had a good time so far, and I look forward to some more.
Excellent. Elizabeth, any final thoughts?
I'm very much with Aliki. I think it's very early days. It's very early in the play to get a sense of it as a whole yet. I love the children at the beginning. I really like the long speeches by like Echo and Crighton. I really like the parts that I got today. And I loved Hedon. I thought he was the ultimate ladies' man. I thought he was hilarious. So I'm enjoying the characterization so far. I really, really like the beginning of the play with the little children. I don't know if we've read a play that starts like that before. And I think it's very playful. It's very tongue-in-cheek. And I love the way the little children are all like jostling each other for the best parts. Who's going to say that prologue? I think it's a very endearing way to open a play, such as this one. So I'm enjoying it so far, and I think it's really early to tell what the play is going to be like as a whole.
Yeah, we have had a couple plays that start with similar kind of business as this. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Antonio and Melida, which was one of the very first ones we did, I think. If who ever put that in the chat, you're accurate in that one. And also, I think Jack Drums Entertainment starts similarly, though I don't know if it's as youth orientated. There's definitely an induction that is very much about getting the show on the road kind of gig. And we've had a couple of other in that area, but they're all from this sort of time period. They're all from this area, and it's that thing of there's an awful lot of people playing around with meta stuff, and they're mostly called Ben Jonson and John Marston, and yeah, there are others as well, but yeah, it's a thing, absolutely a thing. Lynn, any final thoughts?
There's lots of stuff rattling around in my head. I will just say that right now, I'm just sort of enjoying the language. Mercury's description of the courtier, well, he's not really a courtier, he's got two of the three things, but mostly he's just ordinary. That would make a great audition speech. So it's just so funny, and even though it's in prose, it really flows really, really beautifully, I think. So I'm just really enjoying it on the level of the characterization and of the language. And I have my problems with Jonson, but Mercury says, oh no, we've got to be clever, and he does it. He keeps his promise there, so you got to be impressed with him as well.
Alan, any final thoughts?
I must admit, the only bit that's engaged me so far was the induction. The rest of it, quite honestly, has left me fairly cold. But I could actually see that induction working extremely well if you've got a youth company, as a youth theatre group. Would have incredible fun with that as a 15-20 minute sketch. Most of the rest that we've had since hasn't really floated my boat.
Eric, any final thoughts?
I've been thinking that the last Jonson play we did was kind of every man out of his humor, I think. Which,
yes, somewhere, Eric, we're still doing it.
Yes, we are totally. Which I think a lot of people had, if I remember correctly, because I hadn't been there for the entire session, but sort of, the entire series of sessions that took forever to do. the commentary there was kind of like the meta theatrical device was very labored and sort of difficult, whereas here it doesn't seem like, you know, Cupid and Mercury just sort of go on about how they're kind of, yeah, they start commenting on the play and then just sort of kind of step into it without any big deal. There's no, I mean, they're funny, they're rude, it's fun so far, and very sort of shady. I would not trust Cupid with anything.
Yeah, I think the difference here is because Cupid and Mercury are, you know, godlike creatures in, you know, messing around with mortals, in a sense that mortals are their personal theatre rather than in the other, where it's, you know, we're in a theatre playing games with theatre. This is part of the in-play world, and then we had a meta out of play sort of moment at the beginning. So I think it lands better, and it's not, you know, but I mean, in a sense, they're just as late. But Mercury goes on as just as much as the commentator, one of the commentators, did in Every Man Out of His Humour. I just think that possibly we're just warming to them more as a relationship because they're not from outside of the play world in the same way. And I think we've bought into them. You know, we know who Cupid is. We know who Mercury is. You know, we have met Cupid a lot more times than I think we've met Mercury, and I think, you know, the question of, you know, I think we feel very comfortable with Cupid's ambivalence place in our hearts. Alexandra, any final thoughts?
Two major sort of general ideas. So one is I agree with the induction being actually interesting nowadays, unlike the rest of it sort of being immediately catching us. I agree that I think it's endearing because it's children. And I wanted to point out that all the other plays that we've mentioned where this would have been done as a meta-theatrical device were for children's companies, or at least all the ones that I've seen in the chat and can think of. So there's something in that. I can't envision the sort of pre-show meta-theatrical concept that the shrew, Taming of a Shrew, has being quite the same as this. That's a different setup that is a play within a play, which works for adults, rather than the actors come out earlier than they're supposed to and have a chat about the author. That wouldn't work if you had adults. And also I wanted to point out that something we've mentioned earlier, that the play seems to assume this level of education in the audience, or to kind of encourage them to feel good about themselves for being educated, that I don't think is very high. It feels that way to us nowadays because we're so unfamiliar with all those things. But it's basically, there's a quote from Horace, there's some jokes in linguistic jokes in the naming of characters, and there's a little bit of knowledge of Italian and of mythology. And it's the sort of stuff that I think would have separated people who went to school to a certain level of school from people who didn't. And so our audience can feel good about themselves, but at the same time, it's not as elitist as it feels right now. I don't see us putting it on now without a lot of cutting to make it feel less like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not parading vast tracts of Latin at us. It's not, and Latin jokes that you need to understand Latin to get. And yeah, the world, it does feel like it's from a different world. Every Man Out of His Humour was for the Chamberlain's Men, but then we didn't like it. So some people didn't like it. I liked it, but it's just me. So maybe that there's a thing about the cuteness of the boys' companies that gets away with some of the meta things, and that may explain why some of the more meta theatrical things don't work for different companies, or are successful for others. The actual play itself, sans its meta-ness, the actual classical stuff, yeah, apart from its length, it does engage because all the characters are knowable characters. You know, I've met all of these people in some, or have observed such people in the universe. So I think that really helps. Is that, you know, regardless of its classical trappings, you know, there's a strated society. There are people who are trying to get higher and lower, and yeah, there's some gods. Haven't met that many gods that I'm aware of. I don't know. You know, maybe I have. Maybe I'm about to get struck by lightning. I don't know. So yeah, I don't. You're right. I don't think there's a barrier there in a meaningful way. We're probably just mostly cutting to just get the best material out of it, rather than. But also the play, to a degree, does sort of give us an out there as well with the induction, because the induction tells us everything before it happens. Maybe not in as much detail. Maybe the audience is expected to get all of it, but yeah, maybe that's a thought. There is just who's going to be following this. Do we need to say the plot twice? And I wonder about that. That's interesting. So yeah, we're only a quarter of the way through. We've got a lot more sessions to go. We shall find out more about how much love there is for self-love in this room. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. He will blaspheme in his shirt.